The story kicks off with a young woman named Melody zooming through a snowy countryside on her snowmobile. The setting is like a picture-perfect winter postcard, with the sun making the snow sparkle and the trees standing tall and silent. She's having a great time until, bam, she crashes into a massive tree. The collision sends her flying, and she lands hard in the icy snow. She's disoriented, her body bloody and aching, and she's completely alone in this beautiful but merciless wilderness. In pain and struggling to move, she starts crawling through the snow, calling out for help. Meanwhile, we're introduced to Henry, a hitman who's chosen a quiet life in a secluded cabin far from civilization. He spends his days fishing and enjoying the peace that comes with living in the middle of nowhere. One day, during one of his fishing sessions, he spots someone staggering toward his cabin. It's Melody, injured and barely holding on. Without a second thought, he hurries to help and brings her inside. Flashing back 2 months earlier, we see Henry in a completely different setting. He's in a sleek apartment, working out intensely as he preps for his next job. Once he's ready, he heads to a spa and executes a man named Kessler without hesitation. The calm of the spa is shattered when another guest stumbles upon the body and starts screaming. Using the chaos to his advantage, Henry slips away, grabbing a backpack stuffed with cash before disappearing into the night. Kessler's murder doesn't go unnoticed. A funeral is held at the Washington State Memorial, where his grieving family hires Kappa, a determined police officer, to hunt down the killer. Kappa's superior, Davis, gives him a nudge in the right direction, reminding him that murderers often attend their victims' funerals. Kappa begins piecing things together, starting with Kessler's background. Kessler was a millionaire, and Kappa can't help but wonder how someone so wealthy ended up dead in such a way. As he digs deeper, he learns that Kessler had ties to New York and might have made enemies in high places. Kappa's investigation leads him to a man named Brigg, who hints that industrialists like Kessler often have plenty of enemies. Suspicious of Brigg, Kappa pushes for more information and learns that Kessler had a son named Charlie. Things get even murkier when it's revealed that Charlie's mother has been confined to a mental institution for 10 years after losing her memory. Tracking down Charlie becomes a priority, but there's a snag. His whereabouts are classified. Brigg adds that Charlie was in Paris at the time of the murder, which only complicates things further. As Kappa leaves, Brigg throws a sarcastic jab about Kappa's modest office space. Back to Melody. She's packing up and leaving her apartment, clearly aware that someone is watching her. She spots a man waiting outside from her window and decides to slip away. The man, sitting in his car, soon follows her. He's armed and ready for something, but when he enters her apartment, he finds it completely empty. Meanwhile, Melody is in a taxi, handing the driver a hefty wad of cash to take her somewhere specific. Elsewhere, Brigg gets a call, but quickly hangs up when he realizes the line isn't secure, hinting that he's hiding something. Melody, on her journey to the snowy mountains, buys a snowmobile for a steep price from a local. Back in the city, Kappa is at a diner, trying to order something special, but the waitress bluntly tells him there's nothing extraordinary on the menu. Davis shows up to meet him, and the two exchange updates while the waitress's curt demeanor sets the tone. Meanwhile, Melody takes a break on her snowmobile, and the man who sold it to her follows, offering assistance. She brushes him off, insisting she's fine and telling him to leave. He tries to warn her about a nearby inn, but she's focused on her map and her destination. Jumping to the present, Henry spots Melody stumbling toward his cabin and quickly brings her inside. She wakes up in his bed, disoriented, while Henry tends to her injuries with the precision of someone who's no stranger to handling tough situations. She's in pain and protests, but he pushes through, making sure her wounds are properly cleaned and treated. Later, he goes out hunting and returns with a deer, which he prepares in the basement. He cooks a meal for Melody, explaining that she needs protein to help her heal. He also warns her that they're stuck here for the next 6 weeks until the ice clears, making it impossible to leave without a boat. The next morning, Melody opens up a bit during breakfast, introducing herself and sharing that she came to this snowy region to escape the chaos of city life. She thought the solitude would bring her peace, but Henry isn't impressed. He moved to this remote area to get away from people altogether, not to play host. Though she talks about leaving soon, it's clear her injuries and the weather make that impossible. Henry makes it clear he'll help her only if there's a good reason to. Back at the police station, Davis receives a ballistics report revealing that the bullet used to kill Kessler was an ice bullet, a rare and highly specific choice. Intrigued, Davis starts looking into people who've used such ammunition before. He narrows it down to 2 individuals. One is in prison, serving a 5-year sentence, and the other is a sniper who was deployed in Iraq at the time of the murder. The information weighs heavily on Davis as he prepares for his transfer and Kappa's upcoming promotion. Saying goodbye to Kappa proves to be an emotional moment for both of them. Melody, meanwhile, is haunted by a nightmare where Henry is pointing a gun at her and pulling the trigger. She wakes up in a panic, only to find Henry standing nearby. He reassures her and promises to train her so she can leave the cabin safely when the time comes. Grabbing a gun, he heads out to the scene of her accident and retrieves her purse, taking in the bloody aftermath. Back at the cabin, Melody attempts to get up and get some water but collapses. When Henry returns, he presses her for more details about what happened. She reluctantly admits that she lost control of her snowmobile. Henry warns her that a wolf, having tasted her blood, will likely come looking for her again. Henry checked Melody's bag and brought it back to his cabin, realizing she was still in bad shape. Taking her temperature, he noticed a splinter of wood stuck near her abdomen. With careful precision, he pulled it out and gave her some alcohol to ease her discomfort. Meanwhile, the man searching for Melody showed up at a snowmobile shop. After some reluctance, the shopkeeper gave him her location, thanks to a hefty bribe. Back at the cabin, Henry continued looking after Melody's injuries. She thanked him, but he admitted saving lives wasn't really his thing. While chatting, he pointed out that her bag didn't have a phone, which hinted that she wanted to stay off the radar. While Henry went fishing, Melody changed into fresh clothes and stepped outside. Henry explained how he moved out here to escape the noise and pollution of the world. They returned inside to eat, where she noticed his copy of The Art of War and teased him about not having more books. She even assumed his wife might have taken them, but he made it clear he neither had a wife nor a big book collection. Their talk turned toward the topic of war and survival. The next day, as Henry was chopping wood, Melody followed him around, curious about his way of life. He explained that he wasn't a mountaineer by nature, but had adapted to this isolated existence. At night, he carefully changed her bandages, applying herbal remedies he had learned from personal experience. Henry couldn't hold back his questions any longer and asked why Melody had come to this place. Meanwhile, the man tracking her stopped at a snowy cafe, casually sipping coffee as he inched closer to finding her. Elsewhere, Kappa visited the psychiatric facility where Kessler's wife resided. The nurse warned him that certain topics might set her off. When Kappa sat with her, she talked about memories, how she clung to them, but also feared losing them. She had no recollection of Kessler, but vaguely acknowledged his existence. When Kappa brought up her daughter, Charlie, she admitted only faint memories of giving birth, which took Kappa by surprise. Back at the cabin, Melody rummaged through her things and pulled out a gun along with some ammo. Flashbacks of someone teaching her how to shoot played in her mind. As she put the weapon together, memories of balance, focus, and precision came flooding back. Determined, she aimed to kill Henry. She fired her first shot, but it missed and hit a nearby grass statue. Before she could react, Henry appeared behind her, disarmed her, and punched her, leaving her stunned on the ground. Meanwhile, Kappa received a call from Davis, who revealed that Kessler's daughter had attended his funeral. She'd been paying in cash and leaving no trace, which made Kappa suspect she was planning to take justice into her own hands. Davis wasn't convinced, but Kappa's hunch grew stronger. Back at the cabin, Henry restrained Melody by pinning her legs under a log and demanded answers. She boldly confessed her identity as Kessler's daughter and said she was there to kill him. When Henry finally freed her, the man chasing Melody found a picture of her in his wallet and pinpointed her location. Melody's mind drifted to a conversation she'd had with Brigg at her father's funeral. She remembered expressing how sad she felt about never really knowing her dad. While she had tried to reach out, She felt he had always pushed her away. Malcolm, another figure from her past, had followed her through the snow that day. As Melody tried to call for help using her snowmobile's communicator, a storm rendered it useless. Back at the cabin, Melody confronted Henry about her father's death. Henry admitted that someone had hired him to kill Kessler and that there was also a contract out for Melody's life. Shocked, she demanded the contact information for the person who hired him. But before they could continue, a storm tore through the area, shattering the cabin's windows and plunging them into chaos. Kappa stumbled across a critical clue, but was cut off from accessing more information when the power went out. Desperate, he called Davis, explaining that Briggs seemed to be behind the whole mess. However, Briggs refused to reveal anything, citing a binding contract. Kappa pursued another lead and headed toward Orville. Meanwhile, Malcolm left his hotel on a snowmobile, determined to find Melody. Inside the cabin, Melody told Henry that while she sometimes forgot he was her father's killer, she had to remind herself to stay focused on her mission for revenge. Suddenly, gunshots rang out, shattering the cabin's light. Malcolm was outside, calling for Melody. Henry darted out, armed and ready. Malcolm panicked and tried to flee, but Henry caught up to him and stabbed him to death. When Henry returned to the cabin, Melody was horrified to see the blood on his knife. Overcome with fear, she grabbed the log and struck him, knocking him unconscious before running off into the storm. Kappa and Davis arrived near the cabin, noticing a snowmobile parked outside. Hearing gunfire, they moved cautiously toward the source. Henry, now chasing Melody, fired his gun again, drawing their attention. In a tense standoff, Henry cornered Melody and aimed his gun at her. She braced herself for the end, but instead, Henry shot a wolf that was about to attack her. At that moment, Kappa and Davis appeared, taking down Henry with a fatal shot and saving Melody. As Henry's lifeless body fell, blood pooled in the snow, marking the end of the chaos. Kappa and Davis escorted Melody back to the cabin, where she found a note scrawled by Henry in her scarf. Despite the trauma, Melody felt a strange sense of relief and a spark of determination to move forward. The storm might have passed, but her journey was far from over. Thank you for watching. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more movie recaps. Until next time, take care and stay safe.